Hello, it's me, Dr. Rosie Kuhn. And today, wow, there's 3 people here. That makes me happy. If you'd like to say hello in the chat, that would be nice to see you, see who you are, and say hello to you personally. This month, I've been talking about deep recovery. I've been talking about, I've got my notes here that I'm going to be working with. Been talking about recovery not only from substances and behaviors, like, the substances we're pretty clear about, and the behaviors, workaholism, debting. Hi, Marge. Debting, shopping, social media stuff, being on your gaming, all of those kinds of activities and behaviors. Been talking about addictions to um, mental processes and patterns um, worrying or guilting ourselves or shaming ourselves or judging other people or constantly having an opinion, all of those things, complaining. Those are patterns that we do that are, in a sense, can be chronic or compulsive, that we don't even know we're doing it. That's part of what denial is. Denial is don't even know I'm doing it or don't even know I'm lying. So those kinds of things. There's nail biting. There's picking at our skins. There's masturbating. There's all kinds of ways, and all of these processes are meant not to hurt or harm ourselves. They're meant to soothe and to self-medicate, if you will. To soothe ourselves is really important. Another thing that we've been talking about all week is that the source of all our activities, our compulsive, addictive, habitual uh, patterns, is basically because at some point we feel anxiety, we feel angst, we feel anxious, we feel irritable, we feel uncomfortable, and we don't like to feel uncomfortable. It is like the it's we don't like to be out of control in terms of what we feel when we feel uncomfortable. So we have to do something to make ourselves feel better. And so whether it's I've always been a leg mover, so you can't see, but my leg is moving up and down, or I'm moving a lot. It's very difficult for me to sit still. That is a way for energy to get moved through me. Some people bite their nails, some people will get distracted with whatever it is that distracts them, because the whole point is to distract ourselves from what feels like irritability and restlessness or angst or emotional. Or sometimes there's a physical combination of all of those things, where we feel uncomfortable physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. We don't know what to do about that. And so it's like, I'm just going to go get a cookie, or I'm just going to get a drink, or I'm just going to play one game of solitaire, because solitaire or games on our computers is very soothing for a lot of people. It gets us distracted. But whatever we're doing that's compulsive, so that we avoid, ignore, and distract ourselves from irritability, like, that's sometimes good, but most of the time, if it becomes those habits and patterns, it's not so good, because we never then actually meet the real source of our irritability and our anxiety. We never get real with ourselves. We never allow ourselves to vent or to say, I'm scared or I'm angry. We're not allowed to say those things, generally speaking, because we need to cover them up. I grew up in a family, and there were 9 kids. We had alcoholic parents, and it wasn't fun. That's the bottom line. It wasn't fun. And with so many people, I was the 6th. Uh, there were people that were older than me that needed stuff. The kids that be underneath me needed stuff. So I kind of learned how to not need stuff. I learned not to have wants and needs, and I learned to not know what my thoughts or feelings were. This happens a lot for people who grow up in dysfunctional families. We don't know what we think, need, feel, or want. As I was growing up, people say, "Hey, you want to go for a movie?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Where would you like to go?" And I go, "I don't know. Where would you like to go?" because I didn't even know how to have a want. And that might sound pretty crazy, but it's actually not. It's very common. So those kinds of patternings that we take on influences how we be in relationships as adults. And especially if we're using substances, well, that's just doesn't matter what the especially is, because if we're addicted to certain patterns of mentalizing life, we can become I always forget the name of this. I apologize. The manic depressive. We can become hysterical. We can become borderlines. We can become narcissists. We can become angry people, and that we don't have any other way of doing life except through those kinds of patterns. So we've been talking about all of those kinds of things this month, with the idea that we're here to look at what's the underlying source of all of that. When we feel restless, when I feel anxious, like right now, I'm kind of anxious because I'm always anxious at the beginning of a new live, because I don't know who's here, and I don't know what you want to hear, and I don't know what you want me to say, and so it's like I need to say what I need to say, and hopefully it's going to be a good thing for you. But that starts out to be that kind of anxiousness. But the source of that, what's the source of most of our angst and anguish, or the source of our irritability, or the source of the discomfort? I've been going through a process lately. We all go through processes, but I actually, more now than ever, allow myself to know what that is. What's the pattern that I'm being with that interferes with my serenity and my sense of fulfillment in my life? What stops me? Where's my limitings? Where's my patterns that I developed over time, especially as little kids, that is in the way now? Belief systems. I can't do that, or you're a failure, or you're never going to amount to anything. One of my friends, her father would say to her, people who grew up poor die poor. And that was the message that she got. People who grow up poor, in a sense, she as a child growing up in poverty, he was basically saying, you're going to die poor, so don't even bother trying. And that was a message. And so those kinds of messages infiltrate throughout our lives. Those are the patternings, if you will. It's part of our database. It's the default systems in our internal computers. So the more that we can become aware of those patterns that are so habitual, then we become conscious, and we can hold on to them enough to start to see how they're influencing us, see how they're creating fears or upsetness or certain impulses, our irritability, and we can start to change them. And so that's what I'm all about. If you haven't heard the previous lives, when I got my master's initially in marriage and family and child therapy, and my first job was working for the Nova Scotia Commission on Drug Dependency in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. Is this tiny little town, 1,500 people, but I worked for the county, in the county, and I had a very small practice there, working for the province, working with people who were recovering from mostly alcohol and drug addiction, and their families. And that's where I got clear about the fact that I was actually part of that addiction process. And that there was in the 1970s, a group was formed called Adult Children of Alcoholics. And that was me. And now that group, I just pulled it up. That group is now called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Very cool. Because in essence, we are all, very few of us are not adult children of dysfunctional families. And one of the things about adult children is we don't want to grow up. We've got a reality that it's hard to adult ourselves. It says actually right here, I'll just read this very quickly. Don't want to focus so much on adult children, but I just want to give it as some place for anyone who's interested to go look online. And there are meetings 12-step meetings all over the place if you're interested in looking at that. Uh, it says adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families is a 12-step 12 tradition program of people who grew up in dysfunctional families. We meet to share our experience of growing up in an environment where abuse, neglect, and trauma infected us. This affects us today and influences how we deal with all aspects of our lives. ACA provides a safe, non-judgmental environment that allows us to grieve our childhoods and conduct an honest inventory of ourselves and our family so that we may identify and heal core traumas. And the experience and to experience freedom from shame and abandonment and become our own loving parents. Woohoo! That's what it's all about. So no matter what your background, it's a good place. It's a good environment. I love what they're about, always have. But that was where I started in terms of becoming clear about my own insanity, my own dysfunctions, my own patternings. That it started because I grew up in a family where there was so much dysfunction. Primarily, it was alcohol, but there were eating disorders. There was my mother was also on all kinds of medications to help her calm because she had 9 kids. Blah blah blah. So check that out, adultchildren.org. It's a very good place to check it out. So today, I wanted to talk. We're talking about the Serenity Prayer and the 12-step program. Partly, I want to talk about that. The intention is that there's a lot of people who poo-poo the 12-step program. They've never been to one. They go 12-step program. Oh yeah, no, I'm not doing it. And you have no idea what's there. No idea. Or maybe you've been to a meeting or two, and it's like those people, right? We start complaining and we start opinionating and we start being righteous. This is a part of a patterning that we have is we generally aren't open to possibility. We go, oh no, those people, we haven't done a research. We just heard stories. I've heard stories about those 12-step programs. But so partly I want to shed some experience about that. But I also want to talk about the Serenity Prayer, which to me is the gift that keeps on giving, as do the 12-step program. So that's what I wanted to talk about. I also want to mention that down in the description below, you will find a link to what I call the Inward Bound Bootcamp to Self-Transformation, which is it's a 20 videos on YouTube. It's free. It's maybe a couple hours altogether. If you look at it, it's 10 minutes each video. And it's really allows you to start to look at and develop some of the skills that are needed to train ourselves to undo some of the stuff that we've done to ourselves and to others. And we start to develop the capacity to train ourselves to do it different. Yoda, it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Yoda says, train yourself to let go of what you're afraid to lose. And when we're so engaged and enmeshed in our patterns and we go, yeah, no, I can't give that up. I can't give up the alcohol, or I can't give up solitaire, or I can't give up biting my nails. I can't give up masturbating. Whatever that is, we're afraid. We're afraid to let go of what we're afraid to lose that we get, which is comfort and safety and a sense of, I know the experience within this, and I don't know the experience without this. So I don't want to give it up. So Yoda says, train yourself to let go of what you're afraid to lose. And that's foundational. So that the boot camp link to the boot camp is below, which could be helpful. You may not be ready for a 12-step program. You may not be ready for coaching. You may not be ready for anything particular. And so the 12-step program, the boot camp down below may be something you want to start with. Marge says, those soothing patterns are formed very early. So early we don't have experience, knowledge, or resources to know better. The patterns are very deeply ingrained. It seems like it's just how I am. It's a great point. Most of our personality, there's a distinction. Our personalities are what we formed based on our expectations, what the world is, and how we think we need to be so that we're loved, valued, and not killed or rejected. Basically, that's it. We're not abandoned, and we're not traumatized as badly as we think we are, and maybe we're loved. So all of our personality is developed to do that. And that's kind of all made up. And then there's a person inside that who, in essence, is our essential nature. And our essential nature comes out when we're being spontaneous. And and don't ask me why the word effulgement comes in, and I don't even know that's a real word, but it's the fullest expression of who you are without trying to manage or get or manipulate or do something to avoid getting abandoned and to get love, basically. When we're in that state of getting and avoiding, we rarely can be our authentic self. So a lot of the 12-step programs, a lot of our addictions are caused by the personality development process. I will just say that. And a lot of our recovery programs are about disengaging from those patterns that we thought was us. The more that I disengage from those patterns, and those belief systems, the more I see how I was acting, and I wasn't kind, and I wasn't loving. And this is to my spouse, very long time ago. I was not kind. I was not loving. I was totally manipulative, totally disrespectful. And this was a person that I said I loved. But in that personality that I was acting within, it wasn't about love. It was really about getting what I wanted and avoiding what I didn't want. So if you are in that process of trying to get and trying to avoid, that's that patterning that most often is part of a personality. It's also very fear-based. If I don't get this, if I don't avoid that, there's a fear. So those patternings, and 99% of our fears and patternings is fear-based. And so little by little by little, that's part of the intention of all these lives that I do on YouTube, is the intention is to let go of all this fear-based living and live from our essential nature. I've been listening to The Law of Attraction, Abraham Hicks, and one of the things they've been talking about is that we live in a universe of attraction. Our world is based on attraction, not on assertion. Assertion is those things we tell each other, those things we tell ourselves, the things that we say, you have to do it right, or I have to do it right. The assertion that this is a fear-based world and you better do ABC, so that all of those assertions that we think we have to do. But the truth is what I realized is all those assertions that I'm making don't cultivate a sense of serenity and contentment. Those are like angst, and you better, and you should, and she should, and he should. And all of those shoulds come from the assertions. And the assertions won't give us what we want. Our assertions give us more of that because it's a law of attraction. So if we need to be right, we're going to bring in more people who are wrong so that we can be more right in the world. And it's just a game I've been playing. I don't know about you, but if that's such a huge part of Abraham Hicks' work, is to say we are living in a universe of attraction. I want to experiment with that. It's like so now, just over the last few days, it's like if I find myself asserting, oh, I need to do this, or they need to do this, or I should, or whatever that is, that assertion, I just stop. And I find this place of calm, which is amazing. It's just like you stop those assertions and something else shows up. And I want to know what that is. I want to see how I can engage that rather than, again, Yoda saying, train yourself to let go of what you're afraid to lose. which is if I stop asserting myself, people won't know how smart I am. If I stop asserting myself, maybe I won't get anything done. If I start asserting myself, if I stop asserting myself, um, maybe I'll become a lump just on the couch and never move again. I don't know, but I'm curious enough to find out. So I just thought I'd mention that. That those things are all part of our personality. Our fear-based self, that personality has to assert certain belief systems, and that assertion may not be true. It's just another pattern of being in the world. So that's what I have to say about that. So I want to talk specifically today. One more thing I do want to talk about is relapse. It's one of the things I didn't mention in the first 3 weeks. So relapse is a huge deal in alcoholism and drug addicts. It's a chemical addiction, and it affects. Obviously, we know alcoholism. It's so hard on the system, and so are drugs and medications when we get so much in our system, and our liver kills our liver and other things. And it's not good for personality. It's not good for relationships. So people get off it because it's important, but so much of us, so much of our lives, their lives, and this is true for people who are addicted to food. So much of our orientation is getting some relief from life, that when we give it up, it's like, what do we have to look forward to? What do we have to help us, to soothe us, to get through those hard times? And if we don't have enough, then we will tend to relapse. I have a number of places in my life, because I'm not just an adult child. I have all kinds of patternings that are, in a sense, addictive in nature. Sugar and wheat are two of my favorites. And if things aren't strong enough for me in the direction of that, I will relapse. And it's just what we do. And we have to relapse, not that we have to, but most of us will relapse over and over and over again. Not everybody. There are people that don't. People who smoke, and stop smoking. Whatever the pattern is, or the addiction, or the compulsion, um, that most likely, because unless we have another pattern or addiction that we rely on, we're going to relapse. And it's not a bad thing, because every time I relapse, whether it's about some substance or whether it's about an emotional patterning, I learn something through that deep dive into, oh my God, I did it again, and watching and seeing and observing. So I want to mention relapse in that place of, um, how serious it can be for people with chemical addictions and emotional addictions, sexual addictions, all kinds of places where it's not a good thing. But sometimes we relapse because we have something to learn. We have some other thing that's down in the whatever, the down and dirty, that we need to get to, so that we can release the energy, release the story, release the unmet expectations, the trauma perhaps of that, and releasing it then allows us to be more calm and more able to move forward with our intentions to have a life of serenity. So that brings me to the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer, if you're not familiar with it, it goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this is, if you did nothing else but really attend to the Serenity Prayer, you would have an extraordinary life. Because quite often, if when you're looking at the 12-step program, there's quite a bit of the what's offered in the 12-step program is offered in this Serenity Prayer. It's God, or whoever is the higher power for you, grant me serenity so that I can accept what I cannot change. That's so huge, because I find as in the 40 years as a therapist slash spiritual guide slash coach, in 40 years, the most difficult thing for people to acknowledge is that they are powerless. I admit that I cannot accept. I mean, yeah, I cannot admit that I'm powerless over this. I have to accept that I can't make a change here. Accept the things I cannot change. It is the most difficult thing for us to say, I'm powerless to change this or to change them or to change it. The first step of the 12-step program is we admit we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. The other way I've heard that is we admitted we are powerless over people, places, and things, and that our lives have been unmanageable, have become unmanageable. So how often in your life are you attempting to change other people, places, and things? In a sense, we are powerless over changing other people. I know that, but I can't tell you the number of times that I'm asserting myself into situations that are none of my business, trying to change people, right? Uh, but that place where I have to accept what I cannot change is a huge, huge thing. And it's true regardless of, again, what you are in the process of recovering. So again, I'm going to restate that recovering is we are recovering ourselves. We talk about self-transformation. We talk about transformation. We talk about self-help. But what we're doing is we are recovering, reclaiming, realizing who we are within. And that's what we're doing. And so part of that is like, how do I do that when I'm out of control? When we admit we're powerless, we say what we're saying is, I can't control the situation. And 99% of us are control freaks in our own way. And I can say that and people go, oh no, I'm a victim. And all I do is take care of other people. There's no way that I control, not me. It's like, okay. But we are all, and I get it because I was one of those people who denied that I was in control. But when I have gotten clean and sober, if you will, I can see all the ways that I control. And manage my my life and other people's. And it's a really good thing. I've been out of relationship for 10 years. I've been living on my own for 10 years. And it's been so important to me to see all the ways that I try to control and manage other people and how it affected and influenced those relationships. They sucked for them and for me. And I don't want to do that anymore. And so I would love to be in a relationship, a partnership again, but I'm learning how to do that. So part of that is learning all the ways, seeing all the ways, like Marge, like you said, that the patterns of the personalities, all those ways that it just was unconscious. It was just what I was. And as I become more conscious, I can make changes and choices. That's what happens when we get conscious. We go, wow, I've been making all those choices. I didn't even know it. It's like, yeah. And now we can make them differently. So in coming back to the Serenity Prayer, when you're in a state of serenity, it's really easy to accept what we cannot change. Not easy, but we realize we're in a state which allows us that serenity, in a sense, again, without asserting, I need to control this. I need to focus on, I need that drink. I need that 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 game of solitaire. I need that cookie. I need that. I need to bite one more nail, just one more nail, and then all this. So I need that one more cigarette. I need that one more. It's like when we go, yeah, that's what I'm asserting that right now. But when we can come back into a state of of serenity, then we can shift things. But that it's a very challenging practice. Marge says being a pitiful victim is a great way to control. Yes, absolutely. Nice job. Nice job. Yep. And there's a lot of people who are married to addicts and compulsive people, workaholics, right? I was married to I don't know if he was a workaholic, but he worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was not fun. And I was a victim to that. That was part of my patterning. So I had to try to control. These dynamics in relationships are just fascinating. And when we can begin to see them, we can begin to take control. Um, uh, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, said something like, this isn't exactly what he said, but something like, if you can mention something, if it's human, you can mention it. If you can mention it, you can talk about it. If you can talk about it, you can heal it. And so the process of becoming aware of these human dynamics, oh, I'm feeling this, I'm hearing it, I'm listening, I'm hearing myself. And where I wasn't able to know my needs, wants, thoughts, and feelings, hear it coming up to 70. I am learning more and more. Here's what's true for me. Doesn't have to be true for you, but here's what's true for me. And I can tell you what's true for me pretty close, not always. It was a major um, part of my life to not know. So we're all learning. We're all learning. We're all growing. So Serenity Prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. I can't change the people around me. I can't change the environment. I can't change climate change. I can't change the US government. I can't change the people who are vaccinated or not vaccinated. I can't change any of that. I can change my attitude. I can change my perspective. I can change my emotional dynamics so that I can let go of my emotional whatever that I was doing and do something else. I can change that. And the wisdom to know the difference is, which is it? A lot of times I do muscle testing to check in with myself. And a lot of times if I'm mad at somebody, I'll go, is this a good thing? It's like, well, yes, this is a good thing. And am I right? Yes, you're right. And within 2 or 3 days, I go, oh, great. I can see how I'm right then, but I'm not right in that. The wisdom kicks in and I go, oh man, that's just like me. I do the same thing. I'm pissed off at them, but I'm doing the same thing. Now what do I do? And it allows me, in a sense, that wisdom to make a difference. And that's the adulting that takes place. That's the taking responsibility and accountability for your life. That accepting what I cannot change, I'm powerless over the people in my life, my children, um, my exes, my family, whatever that is. I'm powerless over that. I'm powerless over so much. And the more that I admit that, then I can see and have the courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom, cultivating the wisdom to know the difference. So, and the last thing about the serenity prayer I think is really important is, when quite often when we're praying, if we're truly in a sense a state of prayer, is we're in communication with our higher power, whatever that is for you. We're in communication with something beyond ourselves that we hope can restore us to our sanity. It's step 2 in the 12-step program. We hope we hope there's somebody that's listening. And so in that, grant me the serenity. And if you go to a meeting, or if you've heard so many people just rattle off the serenity prayer, they're not actually engaging in the articulation of what it's saying. They're just saying it. And the other day, in saying it for myself, I went, oh yeah, I'm asking for support, so that I might have this serenity to be able to see what I'm not accepting, to be able to see what I can change, and to see the difference between the two. I'm asking for support so that I can see it differently. So it's nothing, it's nothing more than that. Is grant me the serenity, grant me the peace, grant me the wisdom, grant me the clarity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to know what I can change, what I can't change. It's big stuff. Big stuff. Big stuff in terms of the willingness to be human in our humanness. Our ego self doesn't like this at all. It's like, what do you mean? I can't tell you the number of people I worked with in terms of admitting powerlessness. I go, I can't admit powerless because what do I would do? I gotta no, I'm not powerless. No way. And these people are crumbling in their lives under the influence of whatever that is. Nope. But that's an ego stance. It's not a human humility, humbleness. Very difficult for our ego self to take on and begin to practice something other than that ego. And I think that's what makes it so hard for people to reach out to a 12-step program. And there are 12-step programs for everything. So if you're going, well, I'm a nail biter, well, check it out. Or I'm a smoker or whatever it is, check it out. If you need a 12-step program, and there's other programs that are just sort of a generic 12-step program that are for everybody, which is awesome, really awesome. So if you are watching this afterwards and you have some thoughts about the 12-step program or the Serenity Prayer, you have experiences with your own addictions and all, I would love for you to leave a comment below to share with us what your experience is. And if you haven't liked this already, I would love it if you would like this video, because it lets me know that you find value, and it will let other people know, and YouTube know that there's something valuable here to let other people know. And also in terms of subscribing, these are the kinds of live videos I do in terms of talking about these things and leaving it totally up to you to choose what you want to do about it. I have here's the 5 things you need to know about, and here's the secret. There's none of that. It's just, here's a conversation. If you're here on Thursdays at 3:30, we can talk, and I love that. Marge is here, and she gives awesome comments, and so do other people when they're here. So please subscribe if you'd like, and I'd love to see you again. All right, 12-step program. 12-step program is a fellowship of people who have challenges, to some sort of dysfunction, some sort of patterns and habits and behaviors and addictions. And the 12-step programs are fellowships. That means people who come together to talk for an hour. An hour. They do all this work in an hour. Now, again, I don't know that you need to go to a program. I just say, here's an amazing organization that has been around since 1939 and has got groups all over the world, millions of people. And so it works when it works. And for those that just don't find what they need there, I totally get it. Yeah, Marge Marge added that Thursday here, 3:30 Pacific time. So Thursdays, these lives, that's right. So the 12 steps, regardless of what your addiction is or your dysfunction, ACA, Al-Anon, codependency is a big deal for a lot of us people who are, with people who are alcoholics or have their own addictions. And quite often, most of us have multiple addictions and patterns because there's habits and patterns built on each other, on and on and on and on. Hi, Fred. Welcome. So I want to talk about, I may go through all the 12 steps just in terms of what they offer. But if you've never heard them and you go, I don't know, 12 steps, blah, 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 it's really good just to have an idea of what they're about so that you might find them useful or you might not. And you might go, well, there's so much information online and there are meetings online, but you don't have to go to a meeting necessarily. There's little floaters in the air. But here's something that's I find very helpful. I don't go to meetings myself because I do a lot of the work, and I need to do a lot of the work by myself. And I have supports. I have a coach and I have spiritual guides and all kinds of people that are here for me. So, but the 12 steps themselves are really useful um, over and over again in my life. So, 12 steps. First step, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So, when we admit that we are powerless over our addiction, I'm powerless over those elements of my life that I learned as a child. I'm powerless over those things, and especially the unconscious patternings that I had no idea were there. I'm powerless over that. And they've made my life unmanageable. My life became unmanageable in so many ways because of those patternings. It was unmanageable when I was a kid. I was suicidal when I was in my teens. My life was unmanageable, and I just did the best I did, as do most of us. But when we can come to admit that we are powerless over our situations, our environments, the people in our lives, whatever those circumstances, when we come to that humility, not humiliation, but the humbleness of those moments of going, God, I am powerless over this. I'll tell you, something greater comes in. You don't, a lot of people are afraid they're going to feel that humiliation and the shame. But the truth is something else comes in, a sense of relief. I've heard this more times than I can tell you, the sense of relief when we admit that we are powerless over whatever we're powerless over. This COVID thing, especially in the first year, so many of us felt powerless over the uncertainty of everything. And when we could admit that, it would allow us an opening. So when we admit that we have this powerlessness and that our lives have become unmanageable, that's a really good thing, because then we can allow in potential support from wherever. Okay. So step 2 is, and this is the one I think gets a lot of people, is step 2 is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So step 1, we're saying, hey, my life's unmanageable. Got to go somewhere, got to do something. Step 2 says we come to know that there's a power greater than ourselves. That can be a physician, that can be a parent, that can be a hospital, that can be a therapist, it can be a coach, it can be a friend, but someone that we talk to and know in that talking restores us to our sanity. I know that when I talk to so-and-so, I am going to feel a sense of sanity when my life feels so insane, truly. So there are certain people that I'm sure you might know that when you talk to them, you go, oh my God, that person gets me. So when we think about a power greater than ourselves, generally speaking, we assume it's a God, or God as we have that person, that being in our life. But it can be a physical being. It can be my dog. It can be anybody who restores me to sanity. Who is a person that sees you, hears you, and gets you? That person is going to restore you to your sanity. Yeah. So when we come to believe in a power greater than ourselves, eventually we get to potentially, I mean, if you're listening to me, you know that I come from a spiritual foundation, that the foundation of my life is the development, cultivation of spirituality every day, the enlightenment, living enlightened, in enlightened living. How do we do that every day? And so that's continually embracing and bringing in more of the divinity of life into my being, and knowing myself as as part of the divine source. So in that partnership relationship, then it restores me to sanity. And that's part of that dilemma for people. It's like, I'm not ready for a spiritual awakening. I'm not ready for spiritual religiosity. I'm already a Catholic, or I'm already a Buddhist, or I'm already Muslim. I don't need that. It's like, you don't have to. That's not a big part of it. It's just not a big part of it. But knowing that there's some place and someone who can restore your sanity, that's a big deal. And so many of us don't even realize the degree to which we are living an insane life. The personalities, adult children, again, it's awakening for a lot of people to go, wow, that's what happened because I lived in a dysfunctional family. It's not me. It's like, wow, it's an awakening. I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be adult children. I'm saying all of us basically are adult children. So it'd be great to look at that as a source of information for ourselves. Step number 3 is we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand him. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to our higher power. And again, this could be challenging for people, because if you grew up in a family where you had an authority figure who controlled you and manipulated you and abused you, violated you, you are not going to be interested in turning your will over to some higher power that could beat the shit out of you. That's not what you're up to. And that's a big deal. So a lot of people who are in a 12-step program, they can say these things. This is part of the 12-step, the process and the principles and traditions. They can say it, but they haven't yet lived it. I've had to learn to live these things because they did restore me to sanity. They have brought me to greater degrees of awareness and realization in ways that I just had no clue would ever occur. So that's why it's so important to me, is because my own experience with some of these 12 steps has been profound. I wouldn't be here today doing this without the 12 steps. Just saying. But these first 3 have been so foundational to me that when I'm in these states of thoughts that are upsetting and worrying and there's just no way out, and I go, I'm powerless over this. And I realized, here's an example, in my relationship with my son. This was a number of years ago. I was having this conversation in my head. He said, she said, he said, she said, or he said, I said, he said, I said. And I go, what's the point of this, to myself? Because he's not around, not talking to him. What's the point of this? What's this about? And the inner voice said, I feel powerless inside. I have no idea how to fix this relationship. And so these imaginary conversations allow me to feel a sense of soothing, self-medicating. But what I feel is powerless. So it allowed me to admit I'm powerless in this relationship with my son. Absolutely. And in that realization, I could stop all that incessant conversation that was just all in my imagination. Could just stop it and go, I'm powerless right now over this. And I was able then to say, I do believe in a power greater than myself that can restore my sanity. It's happened a lot. So it's like, and so number 2 is taken care of. And so the third response is, step number 3 is then I turn it over. I turn my will over and my life into the care of God as I understand him. And in that, it creates a sense of serenity for me. Just turn it over. And I know a lot of people who aren't in a 12-step program, but they can turn it over. They go, there's nothing I can do about this. We had a major storm this year, and I was in Freakville, freaking out, panicking. The mountain's going to crumble and my driveway is going to disappear and I'm going to be alone and isolated. And that was going on. And I didn't have any serenity in that. No serenity. It took me a long time. That was a big binge, if you will. I fell off the wagon and went into this state of panic and trauma. and had to work through it. Past life stuff or whatever it was, where this trauma revealed itself, it was like I was able to let it go. And that's what happens when we relapse quite often, potentially, is we have an opportunity to say, what's the source of this relapse? What's the source of this over exaggerated response to a situation? And so we can turn it over a little bit at a time, maybe, so that we can get some relief and some serenity. So to me, the first three are the big three. And Bill W., who came up with the 12 steps, I think he was a mystic, truly. Because if you think about what it takes, number one, the first step, admit you're powerless over your addictions. Admit that you're powerless over your dysfunctions. Admit that you're powerless over your history with your family. Admit that you're powerless over your past life traumas or whatever others things that are out there. Admit that you're powerless over that. And that your life is unmanageable. I mean, admit that your life is unmanageable. What a big deal. How many people do you know in the world who would say, hey, my life is unmanageable? Not too many people, unless they're most likely in some sort of fellowship, some sort of 12-step program where it's good to say, hey, my life is unmanageable. You get people applauding because it's like, thank you for admitting the truth. Most of us, our life is unmanageable. And that's why we do what we do and smoke and do all those things that we do. And the constant on the web or on our iPads, on our phones, it's because we feel unmanageable. Our lives are unmanageable. So we do these things. And if you just stop doing that for a couple of minutes, you'd feel the insanity. You would. And I laugh because I have to do that myself in order to stay in my sobriety and not keep medicating myself in the ways that don't work. So step number 4 is an interesting piece of it's not spiritual or religious. It's just a really good practice. It made a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourselves. So you have a relationship with, let's say, your work life. You hate it and it's terrible and it's my boss and my money and it's not enough. It's not enough. And when you start to take an inventory, the inventory is, what's your part in this? What's your thoughts? What's your feelings? What are your resentments? What's your truth? How do you show up in that relationship? And if you start to do a moral inventory, about anything in your life, you're going to become more conscious of, I see how I'm always complaining. I see how I don't show up. I see how I'm making them wrong, but I'm not doing anything about it. You start to see your own patterns and your own responsibility, your accountability. You start to see who you are in relation to this. And when you start to see your relationship with this, then you start to be responsible for it and take, again, I'm repeating myself, accountability for it. And you go, wow, I didn't know. It's good. And then 5 is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Here's how I did that. Here's where I went wrong. Here's where I made mistakes. Here's where I didn't admit. Here's where I didn't say thank you. Here's where I wasn't kind. Here's where I didn't say I'm sorry. So you begin to see you in the light of here, in the presence of another being, in the presence of yourself, and perhaps in the presence of God, in the way that you name that entity or that source, oneness, universal source of all that is. That's a big deal to admit the exact natures of your the exact nature of your wrongs, our wrongs. It's like some of the languaging is harsh, but it's like, ooh, it's true. And you're not going to get sober, or those patterns aren't going to go away if you want to hide out in that stuff. I'll tell you, I know I'm a great hider outer. This is Gracie over here, if you can see her. She's just come to say hi. There's Gracie. So number 5 is we're admitting. I've done things that are wrong. And that's part of accepting what we cannot change, right? It's accepting. I wasn't a perfect person. I make mistakes. I'm sorry. And truly, it's not like, sue me. I made a mistake. Sue me. It's like, no, it's not that. Gracie Marge says hi. Just saying. So we admitted, step 5 is we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I come across new wrongs all the time, and it's just amazing to me how I thought that was a good thing. And that's just what we do, and that's how we be in the world until we realize that there's another way of seeing this, another way of being, that brings us more into our truth. And we become less harmful to ourselves and other beings. Step 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. It's like, grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, and to change the things I can. Here's all these defects. I want to change these. I want to accept that this is how I learned to be in the world. My dysfunctional family and all the world around me, I was programmed in such a way, and this is the way my operating system had me do what I do, and I'm totally responsible now for not doing it anymore. Grant me the serenity to accept that, and grant me the courage to change it and to know the difference, the wisdom to know the difference. Big stuff. Number 7 is part of that. Number 6 for me, it's humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. So we work with our therapists, we work with our sponsors, we work with coaches, we work with our health practitioners to remove our shortcomings, to become more of our more authentic, essential nature. That's what we want. That's step 7. Number 8. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. So this is the point where you're saying, here's where I hurt this person and did something to them, and I'm willing to make amends. Here's this person, here's this person, here's this person, here's this person. Some of these people might be dead. Doesn't matter. You're making a list, and you're willing to say, and these are my words, you're willing to say, I am sorry. What can I do, if anything, to make amends? That's a big deal. You're taking responsibility. You're facing people and saying, I'm really sorry. What can I do to support, make a difference? Again, these are my words, but the way it's written is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So we're clear. Here's the people that I harmed, and I want to make amends. And we humbly ask that we're forgiven. And we make direct amends to the people that we can make amends to, except those that could be injured by that and others. So it's good distinctions. Okay. But we're saying, I here are the people that I harmed. And here are the people I'm going to talk to and say, I harmed you and I am sorry. It's a big practice to in a sense, not add to that list, but make that list shorter and shorter and shorter. And when I've done something that I feel has harmed somebody or was unkind or manipulative, as often as I can, as soon as I can, I will say, I'm sorry I did that. That was unkind. And because I don't want that list to grow, because I know what happens when that list grows. I'm not in serenity. 10 is to continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admit it. That's the one I just mentioned. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. That's a huge principle in so many spiritual traditions, is that we want to know divine will and the wisdom and the courage to carry it out. So even though this is what seems like it's got the spiritual foundations, this is a lot of the AA traditions, the fellowship, the 12-step program, is universal spiritual principles. It's fascinating. It's universal human principles, spiritual principles. So I don't take that lightly. It's foundational, like I said, in my work as a transformational coach. So many people are in the process of recovering and reclaiming themselves, their authentic nature, their fulfillment of their human spirit. In order to do that, they have to uncover and unpack all these patternings that have been there for so long. I got one more, and then we're going to close up here. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, which it's happened to me many, many times through this process. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and addicts and all of us, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So having had awakenings, we then take that message and we support and empower other people to do that too. That's awesome. That's awesome. So again, whether you're an adult child, whether you're an adult child of dysfunctional families, or you're an addict yourself, or codependent, there are programs, 12 steps for you, or coaches and or other people that can support you in a way that you need and want. Well, maybe you need it, but maybe you don't want it yet, that can empower you to make these steps for yourself. And that's, again, why I offer the boot camp as potentially a part of that process, so that you've got some place to go, that even get to start with this practice that it's foundational to the fulfillment of your human spirit. It's foundational to you knowing your essential nature as a brilliant, wonderful, loving, kind person and contributor to the world in a good way. Well, thanks for being here, you guys. And next month, we're going to talk about spirituality specifically, and what's the point of spirituality and the rest of it. So that's February 2022. We'll do that one in lives. And if you have any thoughts about this particular video or questions that you have, please leave them below, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. All right. Thanks again. Bye for now.